Hi there, I'm Amy Merkel, a counselor and the Transfer Center Director for Santa Rosa Junior College. I'm glad you've joined me today for the First Year's Done presentation. You've either completed your first year or have at least 24 units moving towards your goal of transferring. Today we'll be going over the requirements that you need to take into consideration, as well as some next steps that you need to do in order to move towards the transfer pathway. So let's jump into the presentation and get started. So today we'll be talking about your own transfer timeline, deciding on a major if you haven't done that yet, the importance of major prep coursework, how to research campuses, what the admission requirements are, the importance of creating your team, and next steps. So as far as the transfer timeline goes, this is very individual. And so you have to take your own life into consideration and what your responsibilities are. The majority of SRJC students work, and I'm sure that might be you. And so you have to take into consideration what your work schedule is and what is incorporated into your life in order to balance your coursework and to do well in your courses. So it's important that you set a goal and work towards obtaining that. So is there a particular time that you would like to transfer by? Okay, a lot of students enter with the idea that they're only going to be at SRJC for 2 years. Well, there's a lot that goes into that. One, what is your major and how much major prep do you have to do? 2, what is your work schedule? 3, what are your life circumstances? And 4, just having to be flexible for things that come your way. So your goal will really depend on your own situation. And so it's important that you examine yourself and where you're at to really then determine your transfer timeline. If you've not yet decided on your major, there's a few things that you'll want to do to get started on this. As a transfer student, it's important that you decide on that major as soon as possible, because the four-year universities, in most cases, do not want you coming to them undeclared. They want you to have picked your major as well as completed some courses towards that major. So if you haven't decided yet, some things that you can do to start working towards that is to reflect on some of the classes that you've taken. Which ones did you find really, really interesting? And what career path could you go into with that discipline? One thing that you could do is talk with faculty that teach in that area to learn more about various careers or four-year universities that might be a good match for you. There's really 2 ways to decide on a major. You specifically know the career that you want to enter. So for instance, I want to be an engineer, I'm going to major in engineering. Or I know that I really enjoy communication studies and I want to learn more about that subject and go into the communications major, even though I'm not quite certain what career I might go into. You also want to consider your strengths. So do you enjoy working with people, things, or data? And you should probably be able to answer that question fairly quickly for yourself. If you've had paid or volunteer experience, what tasks did you excel at? So are you extremely organized? Are you able to think on your feet really quickly and come up with good answers to things? Are you able to calm people down? Are you able to see information on the computer and organize that information really easily? Are you good working with your hands? So think about what kinds of tasks that you're really good at. And then what do other people tell you that your strengths are? So for instance, I was always told, oh, you're so good with children, you should become a teacher. I knew I didn't want to be a teacher, but I did end up majoring in child development. So looking at other areas that might be a good fit for you as well. And if you need more help, you may want to consider taking Counseling 6, which is the intro to the career development process, or to make an appointment up in the Career Hub to explore more options and to maybe talk over it with either the advisor or a career counselor in that area. The other thing that you want to keep in mind is that your major does not determine your entire future. So I just mentioned that I was a child development major. I did work in that field for a bit, but not long before I ended up going on to graduate school to become a college counselor. So a couple things about major prep requirements. If you know that you'll be transferring to a CSU or a UC, you can use the website assist.org to look at what courses you should take at SRJC to transfer to a California State University or University of California within your major. So for instance, if you are a psych major going to Sonoma State, Assist will tell you what courses you need to take at Santa Rosa Junior College to prepare for that major at Sonoma State. Okay, so if you're not familiar with Assist, you can go to the Transfer Center website and we have a short video explaining how to use Assist. It's important that you recognize what is required and what is recommended. So as you research majors, you want to pay attention to the language that is being used. And so if there is a required course for admissions, you want to make sure that you get that course completed. You want to then also try to fit in the recommended courses, but they don't have to be done. The other thing that you want to recognize as you use Assist is the words or and. So there's a big difference between those two. And so you want to make sure that you're really following what Assist is saying and if it's a choice or if it's a requirement. Math is a requirement for admissions to most campuses, but math can also be a requirement for your major. And so if your major has a requirement, you want to try to make the requirement for admissions or general education match up with your major. So for instance, I give the example here that as a psych major, typically students have to take statistics. So if you take stats for your major, it will also meet the admissions requirement as well as your general education. If you're an English major, typically you can take any transferable math you want for admissions. You don't have to take a specific math class as an English student. So I've just touched a little bit on double counting general ed and major prep, but a lot of courses for your major will be on the general education sheet and you can have those double count. So going back with the example of a psych student, a lot of students have to have, not a lot, it's typically a requirement that you have to take Psych 1A as a psych major. Well, that Psych 1A class is on the GE sheet. Math 15 or Psych 9 to meet the statistics requirement, also on the GE sheet. Maybe they want Psych 4 or Child Development 10, and so those are also on the GE sheet. So you want to, use that to your advantage and double count as much as possible. All right, let's talk about researching campuses. So this is a really important part of the transfer process, and it's something that you can start right away. You really want to start narrowing down the campuses that are of interest to you and not wait until it's time to apply. So here's a couple things to consider. One, where will you thrive? What kind of environment is really a good match for you? And that means the size of the campus, what's the faculty to student ratio, what's the academic atmosphere like? Is it really competitive or is it more of a laid back campus? And who is the student body? Is that an important piece to you, that the students reflect who you are, maybe have the same kinds of values you are? And so it's important to look at those personal type of things as well as you're researching campuses. Next is who has your major. So not every campus has every single major. And so it's important that you really spend time researching who has the major or majors that you are considering. Cost. Cost is a huge portion of making a decision. You want to be aware of what the costs are, what the fees are, also taking into consideration what kind of aid you might get. But also knowing your budget and how much debt you're willing to go into or how much you're willing to borrow. So that's an important part of researching campuses as well. You want to think about where you're willing to relocate. So for some students, they want to go across the country. And for other students, they want to stay in Sonoma County and go to Sonoma State. And so you really want to think about how far are you willing to go from where you currently live. What climate suits you? Are you willing to go, where it's humid? Are you willing to go where it snows? And then what kind of campus landscape do you want? So are you looking for a campus with brick buildings and lots of trees? Are you looking for something more modern? And so to take that into consideration as well. And then it's really important to visit campuses. And so you can start by conducting a virtual visit. You could also watch student vlogs to get an idea of what students have to say about their experience, and then determine which campuses you will physically visit. If you go to a campus and you drive up to it and you know it's not really doesn't feel like a good fit for you, still recommend you get out of the car and go on that tour to make that determination for yourself, okay? All right, so for admissions requirements, it's important that you are aware that to transfer to a CSU or a UC, you need 60 transferable units. For a CSU, those are courses numbered 1 to 99 at SRJC, and for a UC, those are courses numbered 1 to 47. The next one here is that you have to have certain courses completed. So for a CSU, you have to have all of Area A, which is your English, critical thinking, speech, and then you have to have math. And then you also need 30 units of general education. For the UC, you need 2 English classes, 1 math, and 4 courses from general education, coming from the arts and the humanities, the social and behavioral sciences, or the physical and biological sciences. For the CSU, you need a minimum GPA of 2.0, and for the UC, minimum of 2.4. But there are many schools and majors that require much higher GPA. For the UCs, you're really shooting for a 3.0 or higher. You also want to look at what majors might be impacted and if there are certain classes or a specific GPA that has to be met. So going back to our example of psychology at Sonoma State, that is an impacted program, and so you have to have certain coursework done and you have to have a 3.0 GPA to meet admissions requirements. If you're considering a California independent or an out-of-state campus, their requirements vary, so you would want to do that research on their website, contact them, and then also meet with an SRJC counselor and we can help you through that process. All right, so it's important to create your team. Who's going to help you succeed through this process? So you want to utilize SRJC counselors as well as the transfer center so that we can assist you with any questions you might have, help you to create that educational plan so you know what courses to take each semester, or just to, ask a question of, I'm uncertain about this, I read this on the website, what does it mean? We can also help to interpret that information. You also want to create relationships with university representatives. And so we have specific universities that will visit SRJC to talk with students and answer their questions, but you can also reach out to any campus admissions office and ask questions. So don't hesitate to do that. You also want to create relationships with SRJC faculty and staff. And so again, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, to go to faculty and talk with them about their discipline. They're experts in their fields and they can answer specific questions for you if you're considering majoring in their area of study. It's also important when it comes to letters of recommendation that people on campus know you. And so scholarship letters of recommendations, those can be really, really important. But if you don't know anybody on campus that can write that letter for you, it makes it a little bit more challenging. And then of course you want to surround yourself with family and friends who are supportive of your goals, that can hold you accountable, and that can also help you, that can be somebody to lean on when things are getting tough and challenging and to remind you of what you're doing and why. All right, so some next steps that you can take. One, you want to decide on that transfer timeline. So create that goal statement for yourself and try to be as specific as possible. My goal is to transfer by, such and such year to such and such school. So be as specific as you can. If you have not determined your major, you want to get going on that. Start finalizing your college list by doing that research. Create an updated educational plan with an SRJC counselor. You will apply for admissions about a year before you go. So if you are a fall transfer student, you apply in the month of November. And if you are a spring transfer student, meaning you would start mid-year in January, the UC application is due in July. The CSU application is due in August. And again, for those California independents and out-of-state campuses, it varies. And then you also want to start to research and apply for scholarships. So get that money to help you through the process. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to the Transfer Center or a counselor that you've already worked with.